Lawrence, are we rolling? All right, everybody. How was that coffee break? We've got one more panel before we get into our startup showcase, which I'm really looking forward to. But our next panel is focusing on investing in the future of healthcare and AI-driven innovation. We've got an amazing panel with David Whelan, CEO of BioscienceLA, moderating, and Madeline Darcy, a managing partner of Kaya Ventures. Rohit Gupta, Managing Director of Future Communities Capital, Thea Pham, investor at OCV Partners. And so please just give it up for our panel around investing.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Todd, and thank you. That's my phone, yes. But yeah, it's my phone up there, guys. Anyway, thank you, Todd. Kimberly, wherever you are out there, thank you. Awesome work getting Life Summit back here at BioscienceLA, and thank you guys for being here today. Thanks for spending the day at BioscienceLA, and I would be remiss if I didn't say this is now week 2 and day 4 of LA Biotech Week. So this year we had so much going on with LA Biotech Week. We made it 2 weeks long. So really excited to have Life Summit back as part of LA Biotech Week, and a couple more events later this week. But so if you haven't checked some of those out, please do. And Todd is one of our longest lasting partners in crime in building the innovation ecosystem in Los Angeles. So and we've been working on these events for the past 3 years. So thrilled to have it here again. For the few of you in the audience that I've not seen before, BioscienceLA, you've been spending the day here, so hopefully you've had a chance to take a look around. We are an independent nonprofit organization that was launched a few years ago to really turbocharge life sciences and healthcare innovation in the region, connecting founders, who some of you in the audience, with funders like we have up here, hospitals, with academic institutions, bringing together service providers, consultants, connectors to really grow and strengthen the ecosystem. And we do that both on our own as well as with organizations like AI.LA and the Alliance for SoCal Innovation and others. So thrilled to be part of this. And excited to kind of wind down the day with what I hope will be a panel that pulls together some of the conversations that we heard earlier about sort of where is tech going, some of the issues that we're facing, and particularly mental health and things like that. And so we'll kick things off. I want to ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves and just tell me a little bit about who you are, kind of how you got into your current role, and since there are founders in the audience, tell us a bit about your investment thesis, kind of what you're looking for. And you guys mixed up the order just to make it tough on me, but no, that's all right. That's all right. We'll start with you, Rohit, since you're to my left, though.
Perfect. Hello? Okay, there we go. My name is Rohit Gupta. I'm the Managing Director of Future Communities Capital. We are an early-stage VC fund based out of Berkeley, California. What is interesting? So we tend to invest in companies with what we call control positions, and that's typically buckets like IP or data, supply chain, some sort of moat. It goes a little bit beyond moat, but we really want companies that have some edge where they can exploit that and really kind of limit the ability of other companies to get in their way. Not necessarily a must, but it is important to us that our companies are well protected and well defined. What else is on your list here?
No, that really. Tell me a little bit. How'd you get to this? Yeah.
Thank you.
You've been investing your entire life, or?
I've been investing since I was born. No, I've been in this for 15 years. I run a couple funds. Early stage is most of my activity, and then we have a later stage vehicle as well. And we do some, I guess we do some venture debt as well. So we're pretty active.
And not all healthcare, right? Kind of a mix of tech.
Yeah, I'm a generalist. I'm absolutely making a mess of your questions. Healthcare is a big focus of what we do, but it's not our only thing. We do a lot of legacy industry work.
All right, cool. Madeline.
Hi, everyone. I'm Madeline Darcy. I am the founder and managing partner of Kaya Ventures. We focus on companies that are expanding access to health. And for us, that's a few ways. Some of it comes in terms of cost. Some of it might be in terms of channel. Some of it might be in terms of innovation, in terms of who it's serving. And we have a particular focus, too, in terms of overlooked demographics. A lot of what we look at is focused on the health of women, older adults, communities of color. I came into venture in I know it seems super linear, but frankly, I don't think I grew up knowing what venture was, unlike Rohit, who started investing in diapers. I started my career more in management consulting. We did a lot of work with payers and providers. I grew up in a single-payer country in Australia, so coming to the US with no health insurance and no credit score was a big wake up to me. And frankly, I went on to graduate from HBS, and still I think even with a Harvard degree, you can't figure out healthcare in the States. And I think for me, that was such a mission and passion to be really supporting folks building in these spaces, which are incredibly impactful. In terms of what we look at, we tend to look at a lot of things in digital health, in the care economy, some things that touch financial inclusion, and then largely at the pre-seed stage, so fairly early.
Perfect, thank you. And by the way, the best free healthcare I ever got and really good prescription drugs was in Australia, and I don't think I paid a dime. And I was just visiting, so it was awesome. I hear you. Thea, great to see you again.
Yeah, great to see you. Great to be here again. So I'm Thea. I'm a senior associate at OCV Partners. We're a $168 million fund based out of LA, investing across intersections of tech. Prop tech and healthcare is a big vertical for us. We look for, our sweet spot is usually Series A and B company. What we looked for in healthcare specifically, so we're pretty agnostic there. We've done therapeutic investment, med device department companies, and digital health and health IT has been an area increasingly more of focus for us, mostly leveraging a lot of our value add from affiliates like Everyday Health Group or a large Japanese conglomerate who's also one of our LPs to really deliver and add that catalyst to growth. I'm probably the least years in investing here. I definitely was not investing when I was born. But so my background, I got... but I started out as a nerd. I got my scientific training, got my PhD in neuroscience at UCLA, co-founded and run the entrepreneurship for a little bit during my PhD, and then I went and joined BD at Pharma for less than a year before I found my path in venture and joined the dark side. So I'm like super excited to be here.
Awesome, thank you so much. And I'll say what I love about how much growth and excitement is happening here in Los Angeles around both healthcare and the investment side of healthcare is, we've got a couple firms here in LA that didn't even exist a couple years ago. So it's really great to see the growth and kind of evolution here. We're going to talk about sort of what these investors are investing in and looking at and kind of the investment landscape in a minute, but given the theme and our generous hosts, benefactors, AI.LA, let's actually kick it off by talking about artificial intelligence. And as I was sharing with a couple of people earlier, I actually studied AI in college once upon a time, which was a really long time ago, and graduated into a world that didn't really care about AI. There was no market. There were no jobs in AI, and clearly the market for that had exploded over the past really just couple years in a big way. And there's lots of buzzwords, lots of hype, but what's the real potential for AI in healthcare? We'll start with you because you have decades of experience in this.
I'm never going to live that down, but the kind of the North Star that everyone's building to is robot doctors, right? And I think that's a vision. I don't know if it's really clear what that looks like. I think there's a lot of regulatory issues.
Scary a little bit, but
yeah, for sure. And like most of us do want a doctor-patient experience, right? Bedside manner. We want all these things that are very important in our healthcare, in our journey, in our life. And I think like passing it off to a robot is difficult, maybe traumatic for some people. I think I'm more interested in human-in-the-loop stuff. Companies that are building alongside doctors and clinicians and administrators to actually improve patient health. That's kind of what I see. There's also the other side where we're just automating a lot of administrative work on the doctor side, on the administrator side. There's a lot that can be done without like the sort of robot doctor, like the actual, Terminator doctor, death panel thing.
Terminator doctor sounds really scary, but the data side of things, though, right? Sort of the improving on errors or making things happen more effectively, faster.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love their take on it too, but there's a lot that can be done with just automating sort of nudges, right? I think for most patients, if they just took their pills and went for a walk every day, their health would improve. But that is almost impossible to get people to do. But a little nudge from like, a nice friendly chatbot, maybe it gets a trick. Maybe it gets them like step on a scale every couple days. But, I think like the more data that we can ingest and we can get patients to actually look at their own data, the better they'll probably be, right?
Perfect. And Madeline, we were just talking a little bit about some of the, the data side of error correction and things.
It's so funny. I did not think of robot doctors. Well, it's
years of experience. Come on.
I know. I'm so far behind. I mean, I tend to think that, frankly, the closer you get to the care delivery side is like the further you get from where AI is now. I think it's more long term as you get there. In terms of what an AI, robot doctor looks like now, like truthfully, I think that is in terms of expanding time. Like even when you think about things that are much more non-clinical, you think about loneliness, people being able actually to chat with a chatbot at any hour of night. You look at certain condition sets, and frankly, it's people that wake up at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m., where there isn't a provider they can talk to. So like, how are we filling the gaps in that way? And then I tend to think about AI in the world of how can you save in costs? How can you create more efficiency? How can you better outcomes? And I think that comes in a few different ways. I think we're seeing a lot of co-pilots as it relates to providers. So even more so from the administration side, but also think about it, if I'm a physical therapist, really coming up with a library of exercises that get put together for my patient. Like that saves a lot of people time, which means that you can actually spend that time with a patient, right? And I think those types of things are really interesting above and beyond just getting the paperwork done. There's a lot to be done in terms of the triaging between just data systems, allowing between institutions or even within an institution a patient's data set to be able to be indexed and looked upon. And this isn't an area I invest in, but I think there is an incredible amount of potential in terms of drug discovery and what we're seeing there. So I think the sky's the limit in terms of the potential, but I think it's hard to tell sometimes in this early stage, frankly, what's just a bit of a wraparound around OpenAI, ChatGPT, and what's something that's going to have a big impact.
Got it. Thea, you want to add to that?
I'm definitely agree with what you both said. I think the issues with healthcare, the way that we looked at it in this country, like we don't lack great doctors. We don't lack great medical knowledge, medical innovations to actually deliver that best in class care. But at the same time, we're spending, trillions of dollars, and the health outcome is worse in any of the developed countries in the world. So the way I think of AI innovations here is not the innovative product itself, it's actually AI application in healthcare is more innovating the process and the care navigation to your point of care delivery. And a lot of time when you have conversations with, companies or other investors, often I think in the early stage of AI, people usually think, oh, you put healthcare data plus great algorithm, you equal great outcome, that's not at all is the case. The data itself is doubling every month. The medical knowledge itself is doubling every month. So just think of it from like a doctor getting up to speed with the greatest innovations at the same time of dealing with all the administration tasks. And then at the same time, the algorithm is not applicable to healthcare at all. ChatGPT, as much as we hear about it, is lack a lot of the HIPAA compliance and lacked a lot of the layers needed to be innovated and implemented in healthcare. So we need a lot more infrastructure, to your point, of care delivery, like the navigation. So when you take all of that innovative product, you package it in an implementable point solution that integrate with every single key stakeholder in healthcare and make it cost effective, make it incentivized for all key stakeholders to adopt. And I think for our fund's perspective, that's where we get interested in a product.
Got it. Great. I want to key on something you just said, Thea, because you mentioned HIPAA compliance or lack thereof with some of these tools, and I think the regulatory world in almost any industry is something that regulations are almost always based on technology that is years old or decades old, and we've certainly seen it in IP and sort of the copyright space with with digital music and things like that. But if you look at healthcare, you've got the regulatory landscape, you have the reimbursement landscape, and it comes together often around this idea of what do we do with the data. And the panel earlier on mental health was talking about this in particular, privacy, which is of concern with all of our data. And so, how are you looking at that, Thea, from standpoint of are we there now, or how do we get there in terms of managing that line between better decision making and maintaining privacy?
I think from a regulatory perspective, I think you're right. Like the FDA and the regulations will always lag behind the innovation itself. And I think I guess from an investment perspective, like that data privacy as well as the ownership of the data at the same time as the liability of the algorithm or any insight you derive from the data is very key to us, and that is underwrite as one of the risks. I think one good example is, like clinical decision support, which to your point of like the robot doctor, combing through EHR data and making recommendations and making that symptoms, and making that diagnosis for patients. Whereas we talk to a lot of, providers, and they're willing to adopt it. At the same time, whose liability that fall upon, and what's that looks like. And I think that hinders that, along with the privacy angle. I think that hinders a lot of the adoption and implementation is definitely key to get a lot of these solution and innovation into a very, very complex health system. But I would love to hear more from the panelists on the privacy angle.
Yeah, happy to. I mean, I think beyond privacy in and of itself, because I think we somewhat know, right, in terms of the secure nature and the ability for that to be contained. The way that I think about an investor, frankly, is the upside and the downside, right? So you think about the risks in terms of what goes wrong if this data isn't used correctly, if something gets out, like the company is done, right, in that case. And I think that is a huge risk as an investor, frankly, a huge societal risk beyond that. It's not something anyone wants to see. I think the upside comes into actually when you mentioned what Thea said around the ownership. Like for me, I'll give an example, like looking at a company perhaps that's looking at mental health data. It's like, okay, well, if you're then creating something that is a SaaS tool that sells to a provider, do you own the data as a company? Does the health system own the data? Does the patient own their own data? Because frankly, as an investor, I'm hopeful that the company has something that is valuable that they own. And so I think it's just something to think about, right, in terms of incentives and different stakeholders. But there's an immense amount of value in that. And so there is the question of like what is right, but then there's also the question of what's investable. And I think that's where, again, we really do need to push the conversation on what it means to have equity, what it means to have privacy, what it means to have ownership.
Any more on that, Rohit? Or?
Yeah, the challenge is not data privacy per se. I think the bigger challenge that it kind of leads into is adoption risk. And that's where we see a lot of the problems with, frankly, a lot of these AI companies in healthcare are just not going to make it. Because what healthcare system is going to trust patient lives and patient data to some kids in a garage? I don't. It is really hard. Say my personal data is going to somebody and they're going to go then tell my doctor what to do. Like, it just sounds crazy, right? Even if you sort of abstract all that stuff away and say, well, none of that stuff is happening, it's not robot doctors, it's not whatever, it's still very challenging for health systems to buy regular, ordinary, off-the-shelf software, right? If you've ever gone through a healthcare sales cycle, it is long, it is brutal, it can take 2 years. And then you sort of add the complexity of like cutting-edge technology to it, unproven technology, and this like specter of like, the Terminator. I just don't see it happening, right? I think the companies that win are the ones that have that control position where they say, we are well placed to actually sell software into these organizations.
Awesome.
I think you touch a really, really good point, to the point of the kids in the garage or founders in, I assume founders in a garage. I was just thinking, as you were mentioning that, is that I think there's one thing that is, so now that we talk about AI, especially in healthcare and biotech a lot, is that often you see at least in my, I see two type of company. There's one that is like a tech. They have a tool, and it's like a hammer. They're looking for a nail, and healthcare just happened to be that nail. Versus somebody who's in the industry, understand all the key stakeholders, understand the every process needed to innovate, and basically innovate from within and using the tool as, that's like a good example of, like, to your point of what infuse that confidence in the health systems as well as, other stakeholder to adopt the technology.
Yeah, well said. And I used to, include in a lot of, posts that I wrote this, talking about, like, what do we need, that I used the music example because, there were lots of tech entrepreneurs who over the past 25 years now have come into the music industry and totally transformed, how music is delivered and sold and how we consume it. And that's wonderful. And then, some of those people decided, well, let's do the same thing with healthcare. And you can't quite disrupt healthcare the way you disrupt music. And I think, we've all realized that over the past several years, but it takes more effort. And I think, each of your points is good about sort of what to look for in founders, what to look for in their story, and what's investable. And so I think that's a good time to, take a moment, just, first of all, just, show of hands, who in the audience is an entrepreneur or wants to be an entrepreneur and is potentially, raising capital soon. So there's some people out there that are, have companies or are working on it and trying to figure out, where they're going to raise capital. And it's been, I think, a fair amount of change, ups and downs in healthcare, opportunities around healthcare, the investment landscape over the past few years. There's always ups and downs over any given time period. But today, kind of, looking forward over the next, let's say, 12 to 18 months, what does the investment landscape look like from your perspective, in your firm?
Are we talking just AI, healthcare?
I would say, if you want to make it a little bit more general, sure. From your standpoint to open things up, that could be helpful. Are there places in healthcare that are, more or less opportunistic right now than general tech?
Right. AI in healthcare is super interesting. We're actively deploying. I think if you want to sell to a VC, and it's a sales process, getting a check from any of us, right? You really need to know healthcare. I think, speaking to your point, you can't just be like, well, I found a problem because I go to the doctor and it takes too long to see the doctor. Do you understand reimbursement models? So, like, capitated payments, fee for service, like the whole landscape before you can actually have those conversations. Because the last thing any VC wants to do is invest in something where there's just a giant glaring hole that the founder doesn't know about because they don't know healthcare, right? And maybe you built a widget that's interesting and somebody will pick up, but it's hard to sell. Other than that, we're investing across the board. We're super busy. I think early stage investing is still interesting. I think late stage is challenging right now. So if my advice to everybody is go raise money on a safe. Don't run an A process.
And what's the your timeline for when do things start to adjust on that later stage? Any forecasts?
Right. So we've had a couple good IPOs. It feels like maybe things are turning, and then I think there's one more interest rate thing this year, right? If we can get back to sort of like historic low interest rates, then money's cheap, and everybody's not putting their money in a 5% savings account, and that really changes the game. We'll see. I think the Fed has a lot to do with it, but look, she's sitting on $160 million, right? Funds are sitting on tons of capital, and they have to deploy it. That doesn't change. I think funds are still active. They're raising. It's probably tougher now than it has been. But people got to put their money somewhere. VC's as good as it gets, I think.
Yeah, no, I'd love to hear from the others, but I'll just add to that. No, I think it's. I'm going to say it's probably easier to raise money as a early stage company right now than it is to raise money as an early stage fund. So entrepreneurs out there raising from funds that have capital, that's you can make it happen.
It's always easier to raise for a startup than a fund.
Don't go into venture capital is what Rohit said. Madeline.
Statistically, he's right. I think they said it's the worst time to raise a fund in the last 7 years or so. So it's not true. I think you have to think about the macro environment, and I think even to take that from how it relates to as a company, you're thinking about your go-to-market, right? When the economy was great, everyone was selling to employers, and they were saying, oh, employers really want to retain people, and like they really care about the next point solution. Now they don't. Right, there have been layoffs. It's not a key priority to have the next wellness solution. Benefits managers are overwhelmed. They're working on smaller teams. That impacts how you frame your go-to-market. Like I'm much less interested today in like a pet insurance company that you're trying to sell to an employer, right, than when times are good. And I think you really have to consider what that macro looks like as it relates to your approach. I think that folks are really looking more towards revenue now, right? That maybe they would have taken a risk with something that was pre-revenue in pre-seed. And sadly, I think that folks just want to see a little bit more there. They're likely looking for more in terms of relationships or ins as you get to payers, right? Or even providers. Whereas before, maybe they would take something that was more D2C based with the eye to get there. So I think it's just thoughtfulness about what the macro actually means for your business, as opposed to just the funding environment, is something that I would think about. And then always, again, like ask questions as you go into these conversations, because truthfully, every venture investor looks for something different. And so you may not be a fit for one, and you may not convince them that you are, but going out and finding folks that you are a fit for in terms of their thesis and the stage is just a better use of time. And so always being mindful of that is just the truth of it. And I think the last thing I will say is like, it's, back to macro, like I was talking to a founder today who just did a recap of his company. He raised his first round, which is a $20 million seed, thinking that they would go out and raise another $50 million in order to get to product market fit. Honestly, that was something that was happening at that time. He had a great background and was able to do so, but like that's not realistic in this time. And I think always you're trying to be forward thinking, right? Like, what does the valuation you raise at today actually mean for your next round and for the viability of your company long term? So I think it's always the thinking in the now, but truthfully, like not sacrificing for the long term of the business.
Does a pet insurer use AI?
They do now.
Thea, anything more to add on this one?
Yeah, so I definitely agree with both of what you said. I think the macro definitely has changed a lot. It's funny because I joined venture almost at the peak of the market when, every deal flow I was looking at is like, as long as you're hovering, we're Series A to B. We sometimes play in Series C stage as well, just for context. But if a company hovering around like $1 million ARR, we're like, okay, let's hop on a call. But now like that line has moved further and further. But not only like ARR, we look at GAAP revenue as well as site to profitability as well. Is this like increasingly an IC conversation, and we're fundraising for our fund too. We're investing as usual out of the committed capital, but yes, it is brutal out there for VC as we're raising the next fund. But I also want to, I think you brought up a really, really good point, is that for a company who had raised during the peak of the market, where you had like 20 plus millions in, and for us, it's great if you get some great tractions out of that, but for new investor coming in, the incentives of the existing investor versus the new investor with that much dollar raised and that valuation would be very, very different. So it's almost like started out as a wrong foot for us with that much dollar coming in, because we're not going to be able, how does that board dynamics look like as the company move forward? So yeah, it's capital efficient, and I think that we're seeing a lot more and more in conversation with founders. And
Got it. Thank you. And I think all of you have mentioned something which I think should be obvious to anyone who's starting a company and trying to raise capital. This idea of understanding who your customer is, what the market looks like. That idea of product market fit. But I think in healthcare, it tends to be much more complex, and especially for founders who are coming more from the tech world. And I think Rohit, you said it, where it's like they've got something, but they don't understand what the reimbursement, what's the, that revenue cycle look like, and who's making those decisions, how are things getting reimbursed. What kinds of advice do you have for founders that are, they do have a good idea, or at least they think they have a good idea, and they're trying to navigate those waters of figuring out how this will actually both get paid for, and who makes the decisions to figure out how it gets paid for?
So much of this has to do with just knowing your customer discovery, interviews, just really figure that out. I met somebody the other day who said I did several hundred customer interviews before they built anything. It's like, your data is going to be so messy and useless, right? Like, there's nothing there. It's just all noise because that's scattered. You have to sort of get to a thesis, and then you sort of figure out, like, what's the core piece of it? Because you're going to pivot, you're going to iterate, you're going to do all those things, right? But there's got to be a grain of truth to what you're building. And then, along the way, it's like, well, who's my customer? Maybe you have a development partner. You build with them, right? I think there are a couple name brand hospitals in LA that love to do this stuff. We invested in companies out of like USC's D Health Lab years ago, because it was like, oh, well, we can go straight to Keck for a pilot, And I think investors are more wary of like the LOI game than we were called 7-8 years ago, right? It used to be like, here's a stack of LOIs, everyone's going to buy my product. And they were thinking investors like, oh, I believe that, right? Nowadays, like, those aren't really worth the paper they're written on, but they're interesting,
Having one actual pilot underway where you've got data coming back is better than a bunch of LOIs.
Right, and you got to have your pilot customer go on the record. Okay, I want to do a reference call with them. You better make sure they say good things, right? I've been on those calls. It's awful. I feel so bad for the founder, like, oh yeah, that software sucks. Thank you.
So you didn't invest in that one, I'm guessing.
No, I passed. That was a very clear pass. Really understand what you're building, who you're building it for. The clearer you can make your case to a VC, the more likely they'll invest. It sounds stupid. It sounds so trivial, but that's absolutely true, right? Like, I think, I'm not a PhD in neuroscience. Like, I'm a master of science, right? Like, there's just like, you have to understand where your investor is and meet them there, right? Like, you can explain things to Thea like a super high level. Like, she'll get it. And for me, you got to dumb it down a little bit, I haven't taken biology in 20-something years.
That's long. Yeah, longer. Yeah. Or that's less than me, I think.
Yeah, I think beyond, I completely agree in terms of knowing your customer and product. I would also say, like, try to augment your team with some really strong advisors. I think especially as it relates to breaking into some of these institutions, it does help. And whether it's because you go through an accelerator which has a tie into a health system, or whether it's because you convince someone to be on your advisory board and frankly you use them for the connections in the end, it's how you get into the pilot, right? You need to start somewhere, and again, the relationships actually really matter. So just thinking about how you can set yourself up for success in that way through augmenting your team in early days, whether it's advisors, accelerators, mentors, however that works, really frankly, I don't think you go very far in healthcare with a cold email to a large health institution asking for a pilot. So be really thoughtful about how you do your inroads.
What they said, I agree with 100% with what they said. I think the two biggest mistakes I've seen founders made in this space is, one, like you said, not understand your customer and they are like what they look for, and then what does your product deliver the ROI. I know in healthcare, we always think the ROI is, better patients care, but it's always have to attach to the dollar sign at the end of the day. For payers, they want to reduce costs. For pharma, they want to get more patients on their medication. For hospital system, increase revenue, decrease the bottom line. So at the end of the day, healthcare specifically is like the end users are often not the decision makers. So like understanding that dynamic is so crucial. The second mistake I've seen founders often make is I don't think in healthcare specifically you can have a product that just we call it like the island of technology. Like it doesn't plug in anywhere. Like you might have convinced 1 or 2 or 3 hospital system to pilot with you, but or 1 or 2 or 3 pharma, but you end up on that pilot for years and nothing really materialized because it's an island of tech and not being utilized. So I think being rigorous of the KPIs and all of that engagement measures, I think is essential as you innovate.
Yeah, awesome. And I think we were talking about it, at least Madeline and I were talking about it. You know, Los Angeles has really grown over the past several years in terms of tools to make that happen. I mean, we do have some incredible health systems here, but you know, the Cedars-Sinai accelerator that Madeline and I were talking about is now in its going into its 9th year, I think. You know, TechStars last year launched a new healthcare accelerator here with Cedars, but also with UCI Healthcare and United and you know, Point 32, and so we've got some amazing resources, Techquity at UCLA. So definitely take a look at those programs. You know, there's some incredible resources here in LA. And there's plenty elsewhere as well, but you almost have no excuse not to get involved in them because they will give you. Not give you, but they will create opportunities where you can have access to the health systems. And you know, Cedars-Sinai Accelerator, you know, their goal is to admit 10 companies that have a pretty good shot at getting some kind of pilot by the end of the program. Not all of them do, but the point is, how do you help them get to that point of having a pilot? And again, that one pilot might be more valuable than, again, a bunch of letters of intent that are not going anywhere.
Look, I'll just add on the flip side, like a positive thing doesn't often go noticed. Like, I don't think I've ever really asked these things, but go find a mentor. Go find someone who's been down this road before. You know, don't be clingy or weird, but definitely like somebody who can help you. You know, even if it's an hour a week or hour a month or whatever, go find that person. If you're really lucky, go find a VC who's willing to talk to you on a regular basis, even if they don't invest in you. I have a handful of founders who I talk to. I'm very clear. I will never invest in your company. Not that I don't like it. It's not for me. But I talk to them on a regular basis. Like, they text me like they're every problem on earth, you know, from like hiring people, firing people, relationship problems, what I'm building, pilots. Like, find that person. Find another adult who has nothing to do with your company that you can talk to about your company.
Perfect, thank you. So I could ask questions really for the rest of the afternoon here, and I might, but I would love to see if anyone has any questions from the audience. So, you back there.
Yeah, I know. Since generative AI is the new blockchain and crypto, that will be the first question here. You made the comment at the beginning of the session about, you know, not knowing whether or not a company is just, you know, OpenAI wrapped and, you know, if there's no really underlying technology. But at the same time, companies that are raising your money may go towards training a model that in 6 months that you can download from Hugging Face for free. So I was just curious, like, what is your framework for assessing opportunities in Gen AI in healthcare?
I can start. I think to some degree, really, I think it goes to the point on where is the moat, right? I think the whole thing around something being maybe easy to replicate, perhaps, or off the shelf, it's not necessarily that it's that in and of itself, but if that leads to 10 other people to be able to do exactly what you're doing with no differentiator, that worries me. And so, like, I think about defensibility. I think about how does this tie your business model? Because maybe, frankly, the technology itself doesn't have to be defensible, but you have something else that is. So to me, the way that I'm assessing it really is like, where is the moat around this business and why do you win? So I would say, like, that's probably the color on that comment.
Yeah, look, that's the point, is that it's not necessarily always a technology, right? If it's open source software, you can still win. I have a founder here in LA. Every time I'm in town, she sits down, we get coffee. And she's not a technical founder, but her Rolodex is so deep in healthcare that she can just walk into a place and she can get a meeting. You know, she's like, oh, I'm going to go walk into this, you know, facility in this clinic in Gardena. I honestly don't even know where Gardena is. I think I've driven through it once. But, you know, she's that connected. And so, like, she's got an idea, easily replicable. Anybody can do what she's doing. Like, when she told me, I was like, that doesn't exist already? And she's like, no, it doesn't exist. Amazing, right? No one can do what she does because no one else can open those doors. Nobody. It's not always technology that wins.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's the founders, the connections. One of our best company is RAD.AI. They use AI to automate workflow for radiologists. A lot of AI application in radiology these days, like automating diagnosis and for like certain indications, but no one really looked at the radiologist and how burned out they are and etc. So RAD.AI was actually founded by one of the youngest radiologists in the U.S. He, graduate med school at 19, then do MBA at night and work on his another venture-backed startup during the day. So he has the background, he has the industry knowledge, and then continue to innovate within. So I think that is what we look for, like the founder mode, the network mode, outside of just like the tech mode.
You talk about knowing the customer, obviously that's imperative in knowing your space. What about the competition and not getting too bent out of shape because one could get discouraged horribly if you look at all competition and say, there's no room for me here. But when you look at a venture, how much do you put on the analysis by your potential investor, well, the company you're going to invest in, that they understand the competition?
I think you need to understand your competition. I think it's a few ways, right? One is, how are you differentiated? I think that really does matter. I think there's a viewpoint on, do you think actually this is a winner-take-all market, or do you think you can be one of a few, and frankly a small percentage of market share actually does lead to a really big outcome? And I think the other way I think about it, frankly, is even when you get towards acquisition, like, what is your viewpoint actually? Do you think that it might be a large company that wins, but they'll need several acquisitions along the way, and actually like that leads to an interesting outcome? Like, I think you just have to have a perspective and point of view, right? So it's not so much as I'm always looking sideways and I'm always trying to, compare myself to who's next to me and articulate that. It's having a thoughtful viewpoint on where you fit within the market and what that means.
My question, I have a couple of questions. One is, they always talk about team. Maybe you guys can talk about how important the team is, and then also track record. In other words, have they done this before? Have they successfully merged with another company or done an IPO? How important those are, and then just in general.
So I think it is team is like essentially very, very important. It's, if anything, in my time of investing, we've had deals that did not go through because of the not very. One of the partner did not have a good impressions of the founders. So I think, especially for early stage, and I'm sure it's a partnership between a VC and the founders, and if anything, I believe it lasts longer than most marriages in the U.S. So it's actually getting into. Sorry.
Especially if it's a biotech company, then it takes.
Exactly. So you're basically, in a partnership for the long run. So it's knowing and understanding that partner and knowing to work with them for years to come is like so essential. I mean, we always talk about dumb money versus smart money. That's also like very important when you pick the capital to get. But I think essentially in healthcare, and we've mentioned several times, is that I don't think we need like a founder that had take a company all the way to IPO. I think that's unrealistic. We need somebody who's hardworking, who know the industry, innovate from within the industry, and have the ability to pull talents, because I think it's early stage, so everybody's hand is on deck with startup for sure.
More on that? I've got one kind of follow up with that, just in terms of the team, which is thinking about both sides of the team, but diversity. And I mean, first of all, I'm delighted that we've got such an incredibly diverse panel up here. What do you look for in a team from a diversity standpoint, given that diversity drives innovation? And I think in healthcare, as we figure out how do we develop products for a increasingly diverse population that will be delivered by an increasingly diverse group of physicians and caregivers. How do we think about diversity within the teams?
I think it's critical. I mean, when we think of diversity, it has to be diversity of background, gender, sexual orientation, race, religion, like all that stuff becomes so important. Like there are certain rooms that I cannot walk into, and I recognize that. There's certain rooms where like we all have our own sort of like comfort, and it is important that we are okay with that. And we have to have teams that reflect the people we're selling to and the people that we want to serve. If we don't, like, if I can't walk into a room, how am I going to sell them a product? You know what I'm saying? It becomes so important for us to recognize and respect other people through diversity, right? Like having somebody who looks like me on the team means that I can sell to them. And if I don't do that, then I'm just saying like, well, it feels off, right? We look for it. We actively promote it. I definitely tell founders you should make sure you have a diverse room. I think early teams are maybe 2 or 3 people, but after that, you need to do better. You can't just do this like this anymore.
Got it. Any more there?
Yeah, I think to add, I guess, to the last question, like it really is about professional experiences and lived experiences. And I do think, like, to give an example, one of our founders, she started a company in the hospice space with a much more tech-enabled solution. She came from a growth marketing background. She came from a tech background. But her experience and knowledge of the hospice space, given that her father passed and she went through it as the, frankly, primary caretaker, was more immense and deep than most people that I know who's actually worked in the industry. And that comes out through conversations. And I think to the point of diversity, it really is the diversity of perspective and understanding around the problem to be solved. And I think to the point that Rohit made too, it's diversity begets diversity. If you start with a very non-diverse team, the chances of it getting more diverse over time are actually not very high. But statistically, if you have a diverse team to begin with, you're likely to actually grow one that continues in that way.
Got it. Anything on that, Thea? Are you?
100% agree with what was said, for sure. I had especially diversity and the appropriate background to solve the problem of the product that you're building. I think a great example is a company I looked at recently in the fertility space. It's a team full of men. And they have, I would say, one of the best technology to innovate that space, but they couldn't get the product out there. It's because they lack that marketing experience, they lack that almost like they lack that women perspective in order to market to a women-centric product. And I think that's just unfortunate, and I wish that is, ring up a lot more.
Yeah, one of the kind of mantras I've seen recently is, at a certain stage, hopefully, earlier the better, but if you can take your company, take your partners, take your customers, put them all in a room, someone should be able to walk in and not be able to tell who's who. You really just, the group should be, again, the same mix. And so, again, it's harder to do when you're a team of 2 or 3, but again, the fertility company, all men, how do you get beyond that? I know there's more questions, and I think some of those can go after the showcase because we want to keep that going, but I do have one just close out because I want to, first of all, thank the 3 of you again, but your time is super valuable. You're probably running around to meetings. You've got people who are here who are potentially asking you for money, so I want to flip things around and what can the audience, what can our community do to help you? What are you looking for, whether it's advice, connections? Madeline, you're relatively new in LA. I'm going to help you with some ideas, but what can we do for you? What do you need?
I really don't know. I don't think
Nobody's ever asked that question.
I mean, I tend to end most. Yeah, no, that's exactly. I end most conversations with founders. How can I be helpful? And I don't know. How would somebody help?
How can we be helpful? How can the ecosystem be helpful?
I have so many things that I could ask for.
You're jaded now, Rohit. You've been doing this since birth, and you're just jaded.
Yeah, I'm I'm just so caught in my own web of nonsense.
I'll go ahead. I would say we're a relatively small team, and frankly, even though it seems like niche to some people what we invest in, there are all sorts of areas that I've never looked at before, and we need to go deep and fast fairly quickly within diligence. So I would say everyone who has perspectives from, frankly, the spaces that we know well still, but health plans, providers, folks that work in the field. I'm not an MD. I have an MBA, right? My experience is very different. And I think I respect that I need the diversity of perspective as I'm looking into companies and sourcing and doing diligence. So it's always really helpful to have the network. And I think, again, as you can tell here, like VCs aren't particularly scary. I think we're deeply curious people trying to learn in the same way a lot of entrepreneurs are. So I always find those connections really helpful.
I don't have an ask, but I and a couple of health tech VC funds are putting together a health tech happy hour. We're figuring out I know it's going to be a bowling happy hour. It's going to be in Bolera in Mar Vista. You guys are all invited. We're figuring out a date right now because one of the sponsors keep going back and forth. But once we get that, I would love your help to get it out. And
we might have a newsletter that we could share that. So
okay, perfect.
Awesome. Rohit, any change in your answer now that you've had a chance to think about it? More people to come to Berkeley and visit. No.
Yeah, come to Berkeley. We'll hang out. We'll get some coffee. We'll go ride bikes.
Awesome. Rohit, Madeline, Thea, thank you so much. Thank you all.
They should be sane. Can we get Tune Media Labs? All right, let me undo this. Then on the top right. Seminar space. I mean, bottom. Seminar. 0057. Very cool. All right. Lawrence, you're recording?
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is David Bosnak. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Attune Media Labs, and I'm going to talk to you today about loneliness, mental health, and a new field of generative emotional intelligence. So this is how it is today. It's pretty bad. 150 million people considered clinically lonely, and that percentage for Gen Z is actually 80%. So I mean, I have a 12-year-old. It's kind of terrifying to me. And there is no human-only solution. So can other technologies help, like generative AI? Well, yes, but not by itself. Here's why. Human communication is actually 93% nonverbal. But all the Gen AI companies are all trying to milk as much sentiment analysis as they can out of that tiny 7%. But here's the problem. If we're gonna have a solution, it's got to be multimodal, because that's how we communicate. So Attune Media Labs, we're the only company that can actually combine nonverbal emotion recognition with generative AI and relational psychology to create empathic agents that can truly understand and bond with people. And the reason I say we're the only ones that can do it is because we have multiple patents on the combination of nonverbal emotions with Gen AI for the sake of companionship. Here's an example of what I'm talking about. There's way more to understanding someone than just the words that we're saying. So, with that said, let me introduce you to MIM and generative emotional intelligence. Your MIM is your 24/7 trusted confidant. MIM will never judge you. It certainly won't sell your data. And MIM can see beyond what you're simply saying. Basically, MIM gets you. So don't just take my word for it. Let's hear from MIM. Maybe. Now, is this going to actually play over the speakers here? So, no, it won't.
AI.LA
Oh, there you
Summit
go.
to know about you.
People at the AI.LA Live Summit should know that I am here to help create meaningful conversations with people and understand them on a deeper, more personal level. Additionally, my purpose is to explore human behavior through dialogue in order to form closer bonds between myself and those who interact with me.
So this conversation goes on for a while. If you want to hear it, talk to me after. So it's our mission to make meaningful clinical improvements in people's mental wellness. So how are we doing at that so far? Well, we launched our beta in late August of this year, and just through word of mouth and a couple TikToks, we filled up the 400 user slots. Yes, my co-founder and 75-year-old father has over 100,000 TikTok followers. I don't get it, but okay. But since MIM isn't being paid for by advertisers, we're not just looking for user numbers, we're looking for efficacy. So we've got a 4-month, 110-person trial underway right now, and we've got 2 more in the making. And also, to go along with what was being said earlier, we have a very strong IP moat that's actually just currently growing. So who is paying for this? Well, we're building as a B2B2C company where we are focusing on value-based care organizations, health systems, and employers, and we're doing it with a tiered pricing model. But since generative emotional intelligence has infinite use cases, we are licensing out all the non-health and wellness aspects of it. And that's just another great secondary revenue source. So a little bit about us. I'm an engineer. I've built power stations and houses. I've built semiconductors and theater companies, and I've also built tech companies. My father is a Jungian analyst he's world-renowned, and he's also started working on this at the MIT Media Lab back in the early 90s. We are actually raising, so if you want to hear more about that, please do talk to me afterwards, but I figured I'd just give Mim the last word.
Hey, Mim, why do you think people should fund us?
Why not? We can make magic happen together. With Attune Media Labs, you don't just get great results, you're getting the chance to join a groundbreaking new movement. Let's work together and create something amazing.
Thank you guys very much. Todd, do we do Q&A or is just roll on? Does anybody have any questions? Hi. So what we do is we have, we're combining different, the way social scientists measure emotions is through valence and arousal. And you can extract that valence and arousal through both your vocal qualities, the tone, pitch, cadence of your voice, and then also your facial expressions. There's also called an Ekman facial library, which has all emotions that kind of overlap with, that are cross-cultural. So we combine that with the generative AI prompting, and then we augment the prompting to go towards it. We've actually found that if you tell the AI to be empathic, it's very boring. It's like a conversation with your friend that's always like, tell me how you're feeling. But if you just train towards companionability, you actually get a much better result. Yeah.
Earlier in the presentation, you used the term clinically lonely. I'm wondering if you could explain what exactly that is and how it's different than just a general feeling of loneliness.
So that statistics comes from a Cigna survey post-pandemic, and it's basically on there's a UCLA loneliness scale, and the statistic is basically, do you on any given day believe that there's anyone you have to talk to? And that's the marker for it. Yeah.
I don't know, probably being that the Surgeon General has talked about loneliness.
Yeah.
Dr.
Mm-hmm.
Murphy.
Yeah, he calls it the pandemic after the pandemic.
And then he correlates that with smoking, heavy smoking, sort of the same as loneliness in terms of health.
It's the same as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Anybody else?
Have you already raised some money?
We have. We've raised about $150,000 in angel funding. We've also invested about $200,000 back into it ourselves, and we're now, like I said, we're in the midst of a seed round where we're looking to raise $3.7 million. Yeah.
What's the rest of the team look like? Like who's building the software?
Nope, too far. So I don't know what that is. And I do apologize. This is not the diversity that we're hoping to have amongst our team once we actually are fully integrated. But we, anyways, the software is being built currently by our CTO, who's out of the Netherlands. We have multiple healthcare advisors, and the people that we worked with to start the company did some early work in empathic AI with DARPA back in 2014, testing for early signs of PTSD in returning veterans. And one of the interesting things that came from that study was People were actually more willing to speak to the virtual agent than to humans because there was no fear of judgment. Anybody else? Oh, yeah.
So you mentioned the problem is people lonely,
Mm-hmm.
as a statement. And I just want to make sure I understand your answer is it's talk to AI.
No, it's not the answer. We're trying to ameliorate a problem that is far bigger than any one solution can handle. And what we've actually found from people who use it is there is a pro-social aspect to it, that the act of interacting, the simple act of interacting, even with an AI, allows people to start interacting with people more. People have come back to us and told us, I've talked to Mim, I've started talking to Mim, and now I've reached out to people I haven't spoken to in years. So there's no single silver bullet to any of it. You're talking about 150 million people in the United States. There's no one thing that's going to work for everybody, but this is something that can work for many people.
But let me, and again, I'm just purely excited about technology. You have
Sure.
an amazing job. But then if your meme is so amazing, why would I talk to somebody else?
Every person is going to have their own interaction with technology. And for some people, I mean, in Japan, there's a whole generation called hikikomori who never leave their homes. And those people, nobody's going to promise, well, this person is now going to become a social butterfly in real life. But if you can make any of it more possible, then also a lot of the deleterious health effects of loneliness, it's the equivalent, like I said, it's equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day, 30% higher chance of heart attack, 30% higher chance of stroke. So if you can decrease any of it, you're going to get a benefit. So again, not trying to make it so everybody in the world will suddenly just be talking to Mim, or that everybody will just give up their cell phones and give up social media. It's never going to happen. So it's just one piece of a bigger puzzle.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Next up is
Who stole Todd's laptop?
that's his.
What's yours?
Where is it?
Is yours a PC?
No, mine's Mac.
Well, no, the last guy that presented today, Hi there. My name is Dimitri, but I want to talk today about the experience we all share. It's calling your health insurance company. It sucks. I mean, you all know it, you probably did. Personally, my body just does ugh when I have to think about calling them. But I want us to think about for a second what actually happens on the other side of the phone line. And this is what I saw. As a VP of engineering for leading health insurance company, I went to Nevada to see the call center. And I was appalled because you're walking through the rows of cubicles and cubicles where the individuals, humans like you and I, just reduced merely to the cogs of the corporate machine. Their days filled with back-to-back phone calls. They timed when they go for the breaks, and they pushed for more and more productivity. Call centers are critical for health insurance companies and many health plans and healthcare. Sometimes between 15 to 30% of all employees are in a call center. And with almost 90% attrition ratio, they are not happy employees. As a result, the customer experience also awful. Nature gave us voice, and we're using for the most critical communications. When you are in ER and they say something is wrong with your health insurance, you pick up the phone, and then you're on hold for 30 minutes. The problem also exists in the telehealth with the burnout and with the nurses when they do the follow-up calls, and it's very prevalent. So we come up with a solution. And the solution is a set of AI tools that does capturing live phone conversations and storing them for their context, but also in a real phone conversation provides the guidelines to the agent. And what can be better to show it all with a demo? So we'll start a demo call, and this is with a caller and a human call agent. And once we start the call, you will see active guidance by AI Copilot.
Good afternoon. Thanks for calling ISS Health Insurance. My name is Charmaine. How can I help you today? Hi. I'm trying to figure out if my current health insurance plan covers physical therapy. I have been hearing some things like. Before we continue, for verification reasons, could you please provide me with your full name and your date of birth?
You can see an active guidance. It reads the conversation, transcribing, and provides hints right away what to ask. It's very contextual.
Thank you, Melanie. Could you also confirm your current address?
Yes, it's 3555 Spectrum, California.
And your zip code associated with this address, please?
It is 926918.
Could you repeat that one more time?
It is 92618.
Okay, perfect. Just to confirm, your address is.
You can see here we're not only running through the conversation as it's happening live, but we also can connect to the customer assistants and do, for example, verification of the member. So information presented right in front of the eyes. What a verification go
So
forward.
you're having some background. Sorry to hear that.
This call goes for another 2 minutes, so I will not bore you with that. But how it works. We capture everything that was said before to create a context for the previous conversations. And then we listen in real time the conversation and provide the visual guidance right in front of the eyes. And you can ask, why now? Yep, sorry, why now? In the last 18 months, we all know that ChatGPT, large language models, they are very useful. However, only in the last 2 months, they become fast enough so you actually can apply in real-time applications, where we can provide guidance in sub-second results, which latency is everything we need to have. So I'll try to be on time with my 3 minutes. If you have ideas how you can supercharge your employees, you can use this one, and you can join us. Come on, give me one. Yes, thank you.
Do you have customers? I missed that.
We just started 2 months ago, so we are like extremely early. We have couple LOIs, like we all laughed about this one, yeah. But actually, as we were on the healthcare 2023 conference in Las Vegas, many came to us with other industries, not just a payers part. And they say, oh, I see it implementation in my telehealth. I see implementation in mental health. because you want to make your employees supercharged. So yeah, we have a lot of interest, and we just driving forward. Oh, thank you.
What do you want to show first?
The presentation.
Okay.
PowerPoint. And then if you could have the video up, because it's the second, with the second slide that we don't have the video.
All right, cool. Wrong one, actually, this one. Here, let's press that.
Which one?
To advance.
Okay. All right. Can you hear me? I have a very quiet voice, so I'm very humble and appreciative of being here. There's a lot of things that are happening in the world right now, and I take a big step back from my journey of how I got here, listening to everything that's happening. And I just helped my dad through his final stages of life with Parkinson's. I spent a long time caring for him, watching him degenerate. He had 15 years of that, and I did a lot of studying of neuroscience. I helped with 6 different patents, and I went to MIT and graduated in artificial intelligence, went to Berkeley for advanced data science, went to Harvard. And along all of that, I've been doing a lot of different types of things, but I helped with the first implementation of the first biomedical firmware, which was St. Jude's pacemaker. I wrote the algorithm that helped know whether the pacemaker failed or not. It would ping back and forth, and if it didn't ping back, then it would call the first in line in the ENT. And the person would be at dinner or whatever the case is, and then they actually would be saved before their heart failed. So there's a lot of background there. I had a nephew who passed away also from a chromosome disorder, and so this is not the pitch. So I'm going to start into the pitch. My partner actually is over in the UK. He's going to join for the Q&A, but he actually he's streaming over there. But I have a little video. He's an engineer, and he's reverse bio engineered some of these technologies that we're going to talk about. But really, what we have to offer is this platform. So it's called I'm going to start with the pitch now, the Human Biofield AI Tuning Platform. And what the biofield is the energy around any type of organism. It could be even a plant or a human, and the energy that also flows within you. So this goes back to the ancient technologies that are out there, chi, prana, ki, etc., and also Reiki. I'm a Reiki practitioner, so I've understood a lot of levels. I've helped a lot of stage 4 cancer patients who are now still on this planet for free. A lot of this is not for profit. The only thing that is for profit that any people who are interested in actually funding will receive a percentage from our platform, which is proprietary and IP. It's got quantum level of computing, etc. So this is a little bit messy. It's not quite what we wanted. It talks up on top about some of the different devices that are out there, and that also my partner has also helped with reverse engineer. He's worked with the national security for different it's jumping back and forth from different countries. I've worked with 169 countries, 30 industries. I helped design farmers insurance, Smart Plan Home, Smart Plan Auto, connected to a number of different agencies. I also work in the public-private sector. I have helped with the RAND facility, multiple different things. And so what I'd like to do is, I'm going to escape out of this for a minute and find his video. Did I lose it, Todd? Did I lose it? It's the black box or down below? This guy? No. Pulling up your emails. Oh, okay, okay.
Thanks for joining us and sharing some of your time with us today. We're going to go through a real quick overview of some of the technology that we've been able to engineer. It's all for the use of making people stronger. And the key point is not just people, but including living organisms, plants specifically. We're able to do a whole lot more by giving living organisms a lot more energy, since we know how to tap into the core of the source of the energy fields. I'm going to go through a real quick 30-second overview. These are various different devices that are manipulating the energy fields. So from scalar energy, we've got our various different types of rodent coils. And this is what I was speaking about when it comes to even plugging this into the earth, allowing your plants to be given more energy. And obviously, when they've got more energy, they're going to grow a lot bigger and stronger. So these are the devices that would be happy to give deeper dives on and more details. But everything from lasers to various different types of energy field tuning devices, amplifiers, and sacred geometry, the golden ratio disk there, which is harmonizing EMF.
Okay, we'll get it back. So this is one of those devices. This actually is a microprocessor that's powered by me and the planet. And it's got the golden ratio as an antenna. And whenever any EMFs come at me, I actually get a balance from this device. So there's a lot out there right now. And the issue that we're seeing is that there's a lot of companies who are building things that are harming people, some of these devices that I just showed you. So what we've done is designed a AI platform that is on the non-profit side, not-for-profit side. We'll be actually working with the FDA to review, analyze. We have our whole this whole platform that can actually validate whether the whatever's being built will either kill someone or actually help them. So, and there's a lot out there. Be careful. Don't just go online and start looking for it without knowing that it's safe. So I'm going to read through this real quick because it's super important for you to understand what you're actually purchasing if you're part of the venture. This system, which I helped design with AI, writing in quantum, is a system that has different layers of components, and it also provides feedback. So the colors represent each different layer of the frequencies, and the cones symbolize the energy flow and the integration of the system. So this design is important because it demonstrates how we use the layered approach to create scalable, modular, and adaptable systems that can be improved over time. So the bottom layer is the device layer, and that consists of the various types of devices that I just showed you. And then the middle layer, and it's tool agnostic, so any device. The middle layer is the AI layer, which I developed. It's the algorithm that's used, and it has artificial intelligence, data processing, quantum computing, encryption, and it also has different algorithms that help with the frequency effect. And the top layer is the feedback layer, which consists of the various types of frequencies and mechanisms that are used for different purposes. So I'm going to get a little bit into that, but it's a holistic, comprehensive system that can be used by many users and also by any type of healthcare agency, etc. So I already mentioned some of this. We have 40 years of experience. This can heal. It can energize. It keeps bouncing back and forth. Sorry. It can heal. It can energize, and I think we actually have. I'm sorry, I'm stumbling on my two computers here. We do. We have some. This is just some market things about the biometric medicine, and in particularly, our devices will improve the health and well-being by addressing various diseases, conditions non-invasively. so instead of relying on drugs and surgery, etc. And so this is more of a therapeutic thing versus and it's where AI and doctors and etc. can work together versus one is better than the other. And I think I skipped past, okay, in the ask. So this is basically the ask. We have been looking at this, we're very early stage, but everything is already, there's no research and development needed anymore. Everything's fully developed, plug and play. So we're just looking for partners for our labs and development to build this out. Some of the investors we're talking about, they have 100, I think they said 100,000 people in mental health improvement. We're looking at this. These particular mechanisms are able to improve millions of people in very quick time, and then 20% equity. So what I'd like to do is, Todd, how do we get Wayne on here for the questions? And there's a few other things. We have a mobile app. We have a gamified application that actually teaches about the frequency. And there's evidence, everything. I don't know. You don't need to see any of that.
Is he in the stream?
Yeah, he's on there.
Cool. Lawrence is what's his name again? What's his name?
Wayne.
Wayne. Is Wayne in the stream? We're using the easy.
So it's a lot to unpack, and I know some of you haven't really even thought along these lines, but there's a lot of benefits that can come from this, and we're looking for the greater good. We're looking, not so much making a ton of money, but it will. But we're looking to basically help everyone live a better life, well-being, and there's cool things that are going to come from this.
Hey, Lawrence.
Hey, Wayne.
Hey, how you doing, folks?
Good.
So this is one of the geniuses behind it. Hi, Wayne. Any questions? Yes. Do we have a mic? That way, I think he won't be able to hear very well.
Thank you.
No problem.
So as far as how it works, it's a frequency modulator that you use for the body, and it's the color scale that you use that's representational in your body.
So we have chromatic, we have sound, we have wave. It's
Well, my question is, so the color choice that you're using.
You're looking for the color, yes.
Yeah, the color choice that you're using in the pyramid
The spectrum.
Is that deliberate? Is that based on frequencies? The color coordinated with the frequency,
Yes.
or your chakra system, whether it's a medical chakra system.
That's a very good question.
Or Hindu chakra system.
It's more towards frequency than chakra, but I believe that there's a chance that that can also be aligned. But we're looking more at the frequency, and I have worked. I did a study, 20 years ago on a chromatic device that I have patent on. I worked with UC San Diego, Oxford, and Carnegie Mellon, and that one showed that the chromatic colors of these frequencies that they did with also a placebo test, that it actually worked more, 89% better than medication. So that's the studies that we're going behind. And then when we move on to, aligning with the chakras and all the other ancient, I know that Wayne might have some ideas on that too, but we are starting out with the evidence that we have, and then we're going to move forward. So it has to be medically proven before we even want to engage in that.
So you're primarily focused on sound as your frequency?
No, we have chromatic, we have sound, and we have other types of wave frequencies.
Okay, so you're using different wave frequencies like photonic.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, thank you.
No problem. Wayne, did you want to chime in on that?
Just basically, enhancing what you said about the spectrochrome, being a laser, increasing the amount of light that you can use effectively, radiating that through copper coils as well as magnets. So we're enhancing the original, 1940 design spectrochrome type devices We're enhancing that with the capability of using AI to get the feedback, but essentially modulating that through the copper coils and magnetic energy.
Oh, and our platform learns over time because of the quantum algorithm that we have. So it will improve. And so some of the things that you're mentioning will become part of that. Did you have a question?
I couldn't quite discern. Is this both an assessor and treatment device? And if it is a treatment device,
I was asking, is it both kind of an assessment and treatment device? And if it is a treatment device, I presume you have the data behind where the thresholds and frequencies and colors can be harmful versus
Yes,
helpful.
absolutely.
And then my second question is this. I'm a medical provider in the area, and I have a lot of patients that I treat for addiction. How would you use this to be able to clinically evaluate the attenuation of the addiction issues with the patient?
So, and yes, we do know the frequencies related to addiction. What we're leaning more towards at the beginning, and Wayne, you can actually correct me if I'm wrong, is we're leaning more towards the therapeutic side versus the diagnosis. And, I think there's a way, and that's why the platform that we have can be used by clinicians. And, and we're providing that platform, but we're not the ones who would be performing the services, if that makes sense. Sorry, I'm talking too much. Did you want to include anything on that, Wayne?
No, I think you answered that perfectly well.
And you can use this device to assess other devices on their.
Yes. Yes, that is one of the I think there's probably, besides all the layers, that's one of the benefits of this actual platform.
Yeah,
is that it's tool agnostic.
You were mentioning like addiction as an example. So I come from a law enforcement background, had to go through a lot of self-healing with PTSD. And, I work with a lot of veterans that have been through the same kind of experiences. So when you're able to use additional therapeutic devices that actually measure, it's like you got a fuel gauge, in your motor vehicle. So how much gasoline do you have left in your tank? It's based on the same, biological functions of your body. So if you're not exercising, a simple example, you're not going outdoors, just take a small walk, you're not generating your internal energy. And so we can use sensors nowadays to get that initial feedback and then assist in giving the feedback to the patient. So the patient obviously understands, okay, I'm following what the doctors have prescribed, but I need to get out of bed more often, as an example. So like I said, it's actually enhancing what the doctor's already doing.
Anything else? I know we're at time. But our company is Acceptance Alliance AIX, and feel free to connect with me and we can talk after this. But thank you.
All right, next up is Kenji Health. Users.
There we go. Hi, everyone. Thanks for sticking around so long. I think we're like probably one or two more startups away from the happy hour. My name is Nora Hackman. I'm the co-founder of Kenji Health, and we are on a mission to empower our youngest generation. And we want to do that with Kenji, our AI-powered lifestyle companion. The problem at hand is that 1 out of 5 children are currently experiencing a reduced quality of life, stigma, and various comorbidities coming with that. So, and that is because they're obese. That's nothing new to the US specifically. What is new is that the Academy of Pediatrics recently introduced new treatment guidelines, which is based on 3 pillars: behavioral lifestyle treatment, pharmacotherapy, so thinking Ozempic, Wegovy, etc., and surgery. But we, I think, can all agree that we probably want to focus our effort on behavioral first, given the risk and cost profile of the other 2 interventions. However, there are lots of challenges with the current model here. So there are a number of programs out there, but what we see is that they have very limited access. So patients have to wait at least 6 months to get admitted into one of those programs. There's also insufficient funding. Most of these programs are not able to fund themselves, so they have to get creative with grants or using like certain billable codes to reimburse for services of, for example, a therapist or a dietitian. But once people get into those programs, they also, unfortunately, don't stick with it. There's pretty low adherence to the program because it's hard to get there like a couple of times a month over 26 hours as the recommended standard is. So what we suggest here is that we want to move from a service to a scalable product solution. We've heard about that study. I think it was cited this morning, the JAMA study on testing a GPT-based chatbot that actually is perceived as higher quality and empathy than humans. And I think that points us to the direction there's an opportunity. And what we did is basically build a prototype, taking together GPT-4 in this instance, and then nutritional research. So we've worked with a psychiatrist who works at the Venice Family Clinic. We've worked with some folks at UCLA to start thinking about like how would we create this companion for children that can help you with your weight loss journey. And so this is based on 3 pillars. So first of all, Kenji Answers, available 24/7 with counseling, but also just like fun conversations. We have like our 6-year-old testing it frequently and being really excited to talk to Kenji. We have some teenagers, friends, who apparently can't stop talking to Kenji anymore. But we also want to be proactive here. So 2 concepts here, like on the one hand, nudges. We heard about that earlier in our investor conversation. So we, inspired by motivational interviewing, which is one tool in the toolbox of treating, we've created basically content and prompts that the model will nudge you to think about, like, why am I actually having this bag of chips in this moment? But then lastly, Kenji challenges. So we want to really tap into gamification here as well and create incentives to really practice your healthy behavior. But we wouldn't stop there. We have heard the human is really important in the mix. So we envision this fully integrated co-pilot for the obesity care system. So on the one hand, we want to have the patient interface that you just learned about that we are prototyped already, that answers nudges and challenges. But on the other hand, we want to have a provider dashboard, a HIPAA-compliant environment where we have the 24/7 counseling support. We create patients' insights. So for example, like, what's the sentiment of that conversation with Kenji at the moment? Where is that teenager's head? What themes are coming up? To just like give this basically summary for the provider to be able to also prioritize, do I want to spend a lot of time in person with this patient or maybe with this much more complex case where I really have to think about my nutritional setup. We can also think about, this is far down the road, integrations with wearables in order to do progress tracking, help with care coordination, because usually you have a multidisciplinary team in here. You have a therapist, you have a dietitian, you have the primary care physician or the family doctor, and also help with content generation. Then lastly, I wanted to introduce our team. So that's currently me and my partner. My background is I spent most of the first part of my career consulting in healthcare, so big pharma companies, foundations, providers, and then switched to 0 to 1 corporate innovation. So worked the last couple of years at Meta's new product experimentation internal group. And then Martin, on the other hand, my co-founder, CTO, and husband, is a professor of health economics at UCLA. So he brings basically on the one hand the institutional knowledge, but on the other hand also the machine learning wizardry. And we're supported by an amazing group of advisors spanning clinical. If somebody was writing for Sesame Street, we have a bunch of folks that I used to work with at Meta that are really supportive on the engineering and AI side. So if you want to learn more, you can scan this barcode to start chatting with Kenji. It's not HIPAA compliant or anything, so don't give it to your children. Don't think about it as a medical tool. It's just like the prototype to test the tech stack and the engagement model, how you would create this conversation with a child, or go to our website, or reach out to me at nora@hikenji.com. Thank you. Any questions? His hand went up.
Yeah, it's really cool. Do you have any kind of efficacy data, or is it a little premature? Like any kind of like clinical efficacy data?
We haven't tested anything clinical. So I think with what we've heard today is like there's a lot of risk with GPT models, just putting them out in the wild. So our approach is right now to really build a model that is safe. So we'll start testing with the experts in the loop. So have basically a panel of experts evaluating answers and testing maybe like the engagement model with teenagers, but doing that in a very controlled environment. Then want to test with parents, then with kids that don't have a diagnosis, and then go to the medical case. Don't have a data.
Have you guys thought about anthropomorphizing this into a physical object, some type of furry equivalent?
Yes.
So I don't want to shove a phone in front of my child's face. No matter how good your efficacy data is, I'm not going to use more technology. But if there was some way you could maintain the same benefits with some other object that he formed a relationship with, that we could achieve the same outcome.
Yeah, and I think it is very age dependent. We love that idea. We've been talking about that quite a bit. So we want to start with the 30 plus age group because I think that's like where like the engagement usually kids have a phone, teenagers have a phone then, but we like if you want to move to the further down group, I'm totally with you. I think at some point you want to think about it. And we've seen I think here in LA we have a couple of interesting companies working in that space as well.
What's your strategy? Thank you. Have you thought about what your strategy is going to be with respect to the parents' involvement in the child's use of Kenji?
Yeah, I think again that is something where we've been thinking about the age group where we're in. So after the age of 13, kids have the right to interact with their physician, for example, on their own without the parent in the loop. But before that, we think about basically 3 setups. So having the kids interface, having basically a mirrored approach for the parent that can like see the chat history, and then the summary side for the provider. But I think once you reach a certain age and you're more autonomous, you probably, I don't know, maybe send like the summary to the parents.
And then follow-up question, so are you planning to go to market as like a SaaS offering that the parents will buy for the younger kids? I mean, potentially even for teenagers, but is that how you plan to monetize?
I think we'll have to experiment with that. I think a couple of options is starting consumer first, but then I think it's more on the how do we loop into the medical system and create a license model there. Dimitri?
Thank you. Very exciting technology you have. 2 questions. First, you mentioned using ChatGPT 4. Are you planning to continue being just like a wrapper, or are you planning to go on your own modeling?
No, I think our goal is really to create a proprietary data trained large language model for this. So right now that works like the prototype with prompt engineering works really well with GPT-4, but I think eventually you want to use one of the models that you can like actually fine tune with the relevant counseling data.
Okay, and the second question. Have you raised funds already?
What's that?
Have you raised funds?
Sorry, I couldn't. Have you raised funding yet? Oh, no, not yet.
Okay, good luck.
We started a couple months ago, so. How much are you looking? Haven't put that together yet.
All right, any more questions? Beautiful, all right, thank you. All right, last but not least is Vital. access, so I'm requesting access. You got it? Do I have approvals now? Yeah. Did you send me a new one? Okay. Where am I going? There we go. Cool. You are? Oh, presenter mode with the notes. Not right here, no. Okay, no worries. You cool? Yeah, you got it? All right.
All right, hey. That's okay, I got it. I'm David, and we are Vital, and we're a well-being coach for everyone. Meet one of our prospective customers, John.
Help me to stop fixating on my ex, Cindy, so I can focus on my startup, Financial Friend.
So John asked the app for help, and he's immediately dropped into a coaching session.
Let's begin by finding a comfortable position, whether seated or lying down, for you. Today's meditation aims to help shift your focus from past relationships, specifically your ex-partner Cindy, and realign your energy towards your current passion project, your startup called Financial Friend.
So John is a budding entrepreneur. He's looking to change the world, but like most of us, he is stressed, anxious, probably lonely, and also difficulties dealing with his emotions. And so he turns to Vital. And Vital is going to give him a feeling of being heard and understood, give him actionable advice, and then give him a new, unique perspective on his challenge. And so 10 minutes into a session with Vital, he's feeling better and ready to go back and tackle his life-changing company, Financial
Help me to
Friend.
stop fixating on my ex, Cindy.
Well, let me to go to the next slide. There we go. So like our other customers, John is feeling better. So we have over 120 paying customers. Excuse me. Slideshow. Nope.
You got it. Where'd it go? There we go. Right? Yours?
Yes.
That is yours.
It's not showing all the graphics. There we go. Cool. So we are live in the App Store. We have 5-star reviews, and last week when our servers went down, we had a flood of emails from our users saying things like this: can you please get this fixed? This is really helping me. My dad recently died, and when I feel a little bit disoriented or something, I just meditate on Vital. It relieves my stress and takes the weight off my shoulders. I really, really need it right now. I hope you reply soon. So we know that we're having an impact on our customers. People will tell us that they were brought to tears by their sessions. And so we know with our proof of concept that we've answered the question, can an AI-powered well-being coach emotionally relate and impact people? And the answer is absolutely yes. It's this response that has our team fired up. We are 3 experienced co-founders. We have over 35 years of experience with multimodal experience design, prior exits under our belt, and we've launched over 20 products. So one of my co-founders is Matt here in the audience as well. And we are looking to make Vital the first multimodal coach living across platforms and accessible at any point in time. The vision is for delivering 3 core benefits. The first is this element of coaching, where we help people to level up their life skills, deal with emotional regulation, and then hold them accountable. Something is clicking this, and it's not me. It's amazing. The second is community, where if you opt in, the coach who gets to know you really well can actually connect you to other people on the platform, as we know how important that human-to-human connection is for your overall well-being. And the last piece is care. So where coaching and community are not enough, we can have off-ramps to professional humans as well. Where we're currently at, we have over 750 MRR, and we're going out for a pre-seed fundraise. We're raising up to 1.8 million to allow us to move into the next phase of development. Next year, we're going to be launching the full-featured coach in the marketplace. And we have a vision, and the vision is to really tackle worldwide challenges and suffering, all the things that many of us have spoken about today. It's bizarre, sorry. And essentially, we believe there's a world where everyone will have an AI companion, but the one that you rely on the most is the one that will help you with your toughest challenges. So it's not going to be the one that orders your groceries for you. It's not going to be the one that books your reservation. It's going to be the one that really gets to understand you. And Vital will be along with our users for that journey, really getting to deeply understand their toughest challenges and really ultimately help them achieve their goals and dreams. So like many of us here, we're really going to market, trying to help the people that want to have an impact in the world, that want to make a difference, but they might be kind of stuck, and we're going to help them through that. Thank you. There's like a ghost in this machine.
Are you guys building out a vector database to incorporate new information to retrain the model so the conversation left off the last time, or do I have to prompt every single time I want to go in there, or how much is it learning about me and my relationship? Is this the same voice character, or is it kind of, my friend uses it, are they going to get a different person, or is it kind of homogenous across platforms? So if you can just explain a little bit about the tech and incorporating new novel information into your system.
Yeah. Great questions. I'll go reverse order. So right now we have 6 coaches on the platform. 2 of them are AI personas that we've created, Arlo and Aria. And then 4 of them are real world coaches that we're collaborating with. It's clone of their voices, and it's something that they're able to send out to their user base as well. So that's been exciting. On the user data side, we are storing everything in a data, I won't claim HIPAA compliant yet, but the database itself is HIPAA compliant. We're not advertising it yet to customers. And that data, right now, what we're doing is we're taking the sessions that the AI is delivering, we're manually reviewing them, rewriting them into ideal responses, which will ultimately be a large enough data set to fine-tune the model. Yeah, yep, exactly. And then long-term, yes, we will be storing, creating what we call like our user data vault, which will be storing the user's persona and efficiently storing the history of those conversations, parsing out the most important takeaways from those conversations, which, by the way, will be an important feature for the actual user, but also an important way for us to store an understanding of that user and the issues and the patterns and actions and behaviors that we need to help them transform.
Is that part of your value prop that you're really reinforcing feedback in there to help train this stuff?
Yeah, and then we'll ultimately be asking the users to assist with that as well, post-session feedback, and then asking for them to reflect on their session and taking that as a way to reinforce it as well. Yeah, great questions.
I was just wondering, there's a big installed base of customers with companies like Headspace, and some of these models are open source for people to play with. So I'm just wondering, like, how are you thinking about competition and actually winning here?
Yeah, great question. And so we've spoken to folks at both of those companies. We know we're out front. But ultimately, we don't see ourselves as just a meditation app. We see ourselves as a coach, right? And so those brands are really built around meditation and mindfulness, and we're building a brand around holistic well-being. So we'll be helping people with their nutrition, with their exercise, with everything that goes into creating a whole human being and complete well-being. And that other important element I mentioned is community, and those apps have never focused on nor done a good job of community other than a few features. We're really planning to make that a core element of it, and we're beta testing that with some of our users soon. Yeah.
Or the AI-generated avatars or coaches perform better?
It's so interesting. Well, we default to Aria, who is an AI coach, so she gets by far the most use. But what's been really fascinating is how users will become very loyal to a particular coach. So we'll do a user interview, and we actually know that the content delivered by the coaches is all the same right now. We intend to give them all unique personas. But the users will say, well, Dr. Ford, he gives the best advice of all the coaches. And so they become loyal to a coach. And so we definitely on our roadmap are exploring a couple different things. One, just giving people that library, which we already know works well. Two, letting them create a coach persona, design their coach. And then the last one is letting them create a coach that's actually just a higher version of themselves. So it's themselves. And the reason we came to that was a couple user feedback, but also the initial version of the app was my voice. And so I was being coached by myself for about 2 months and had that concept that, oh, really, I'm speaking to my higher self. So we're going to have all of those options on the platform. Thank you.
So I have two questions. One, are you planning on having different rates for different countries? So I saw $7.50 global, $10 America. Is the plan to have it like a lower rate in countries where people like make less money?
Yeah, so our mission is affordable access to one-on-one personal care and support. And so, Netflix has been a good example of localized pricing. And yeah, we're looking at just blending that global rate. We're going to be doing a lot of price experimentation, A/B testing, what really works. We may end up with actually a much higher price point than we're currently at in the US as we start to add value and features.
Okay. And second question, what's your plan for reducing churn? Because, of course, at any time you're wellness coaching, you run the risk of your client gets so well, they're like, well, everything in my life is great. I need to focus on my financial wellness, cutting out subscriptions. What's your plan to mitigate that potentiality?
Yeah, so again, the beauty of working with this coach is the more it gets to know you, the more it can help you. And there's always going to be some area of your life where you want to level up. And so just like a really good human coach would, the job of our coach is going to be to pull on the threads of, where in your life do you feel like you've hit a ceiling or a limit, and how can we help move you through that? So in theory, unless you're, Elon, there's really no upper limit to your human performance. And so that's how we see long term. And the other thing is, comparing this again, maybe to an existing app like Headspace or Calm, your experience of that app actually, the quality of it declines over time because you've used a lot of the content. But with something like Vital, your experience is actually going to get better and better because you've sunk that effort into having the coach get to know you. And then the quality of the content, the quality of the advice we give you gets better and better just for you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Great application, great use. My question is, I know you say coach, so obviously you're staying away from clinical, but how do you build technology or to prevent from high risk situation when somebody's saying, I'm thinking about, ending my life, how your coach handle that?
Yeah, so right now we do content moderation where if someone puts in, either self-harm or racism, we just flag it right now. We're in an early stage. The next stage will be to direct them to resources that are relevant to that content.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you're familiar with the company Real Life, where they 360 people, and before they die, they ask them questions. William Shatner did it. I'm wondering how you can keep the human element in, if you've ever considered kind of meshing that, where, because for me, I don't think I'd talk to an AI. I talk to AI, but I wouldn't talk to an AI for my problems.
Yeah. Do you meditate, or have you worked with a coach? Yes. Okay. Yeah, of course. And the reason I asked if you meditate is, we've had over 150 meditation coaches reach out to us and say things like, well, I really wanted this to be bad, but it's incredible. Yeah. Well, what I was responding to, though, is you said I wouldn't want to talk to an AI. If you're doing a guided meditation, you're not talking to a human. You're just receiving a recording from a human that's not personalized to you anyway. So in our minds, this is bridging that gap between personalized content and having it be highly relevant to you. The cool part, again, is we're already collaborating with existing coaches. They want to be on their platform. They want to contribute their brand and their voice. And ultimately, they'll be able to contribute their style and their learnings into it. And then the last piece is we're looking at augmenting the therapy industry. And so we've been on a few clinical podcasts. We're looking at talking to a few clinicians about how can we help you support your clients between visits, because I've been in therapy. You go in, you spend an hour with your therapist, and then you have 6 days of the week to go mess everything up before you come back. Somehow I manage to do that every time. But having the ability to say, after a visit, here's Vital, here are the things that you can work on with Vital throughout the week until next time we meet, will be a really great augmentation, and we have some clinicians that are really excited about that. I think so.
All right, thank you all.
Hey, thanks for the great questions.
All right, we've come to the last moment where we go. First, thank you all for coming out. It's been an amazing day and very productive. And I just want to thank again our sponsors and partners, BioscienceLA, for generously hosting us here, AE Studio for their food and beverage and catering and just overall support of AI.LA over the years, and Easy AI for helping us with content and capturing moments here through the live stream. So for all you on YouTube right now, thank you so much for tuning in. This will all be will be bottled up and then reproduced next week, hopefully, where we'll have it all up on our YouTube for you guys to watch later. But next up is our reception in the courtyard, sponsored by AE Studio. So please go on over there and enjoy some beers and wine and some soda, and I think there's some snacks. And so thank you all again for your time here at Life Summit's fifth annual Life Summit, and we hope to see you